Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. And I think video games are very good. I think most video games are very good, actually. In fact, over time, for folks that have hung around either here on the channel or over on my streams or on the podcasts I do, wherever you may know me from, I have a bit of a reputation of someone that likes pretty much everything. I sort of have a general philosophy that most games are good, or there's something that I can enjoy about most games. So, if anything, I'm often told that I'm overly generous and a little bit too positive. But, that said, not every game can land with every person, and so I thought it would be fun, in the spirit of playfulness, for us to talk through my lowest rated games. So, this is coming from my backloggery.com page. This is every game I have rated a 1 star. And it's a 5-star scale, so this is the lowest you can go. These are 2 out of 10s. And it's going to be an interesting list. Some of these I definitely agree with. Some of these I don't know that I would give a 1 star anymore. And some of these I don't even know why I rated them that low. So, I think we will just go ahead and get into it. Remember, again, this is all just in good fun. I even wore the Happy Console Gamer t-shirt today to make sure that we are in the spirit of positivity and playfulness, because we're not here to dunk on any of these games. Well, okay, maybe we're here a little bit to dunk on some of these games, but we're mostly here to just, see where my head was at when I played them. So, no particular order. We've got stuff from NES all the way up through nothing super modern. I think 360 is the closest we get. We're going to start here on the Genesis. I've got a stack of a handful of Genesis games. The first one, The Incredible Hulk. So, this one may surprise some people because I think that there are some fans of this game, or at the very least it's not considered to be that bad. But I remember playing through this game and it just kind of reminded me of the worst aspects of everything that's on the Genesis. It was like boring. The controls were really weird and floaty. You want the Hulk to have momentum, to have weight behind him, for his actions to feel like deliberate and intentional, but you could jump ridiculously high. Your punches didn't really feel that good. Just in general was a little bit on the inconsistent side with my imagining of the character. And then in terms of like the literal game too, it's one of those Genesis games. It's a bunch of maze-like, almost Eurojank sort of platforming levels where you're just like going up and down. Everything looks the same. You're looping in on yourself over and over again. Wasn't very good. I didn't like the visual style of it. It just, everything about it was underwhelming to me. So, Incredible Hulk is the first one that we're going to say no thanks to. If I replayed it these days, would I probably give it like a 2-star? Yeah, but this is the way I felt whenever I made these rankings. And it's important to remember, I've had my Backloggery page since 2008. So a long time. We're coming up on dang near 2 decades. And my tastes have changed over time. My general sort of like philosophy on how I approach reviewing games has changed over time. I actually used to be a lot harsher than I am today. So some of these maybe come from an era where I was a little more edgy, a little more edgelordy, maybe, trying to really make a point. That said, that is not true of this game. This game I would absolutely give a 1 star to again. This is Sacred Line Genesis. Sasha Darko's Sacred Line Genesis. This is a homebrew on the Sega Genesis. This came out a long time ago. It is M-rated because it's so hardcore. It is a visual novel that takes about a half an hour to play through. It's just like still JPEGs, like actual just like screenshots, poorly rendered. The story is completely incoherent. It was boring. It was just, everything about it absolutely did not deliver. I mean, look at these screenshots. They seem like they would almost be fun, actually. Well, if we can get it to focus. Like, you see a skeleton with a knife, you're like, yeah, let's go. But at the end of the day, everything about this was a huge disappointment. I got this, I feel like in an era when Genesis homebrews weren't that popular. This is Watermelon Bit. So this came from Watermelon, which is the folks that made, I What's the name of that game? I forget. Very, very popular homebrew turn-based RPG that I'm sure I'll remember as soon as I'm done recording. I'll have thrown it up on the screen. But yeah, it came from Watermelon, and they, I guess, I don't know, published, or maybe it was someone they knew, or maybe it was one of them. I'm not even really too sure. But this game was absolute trash. In fact, they even, when they shipped it, you see there's like creases on the back of the case. They shipped this without a case, if I recall correctly. They just shipped you like the cart and the bits, including the insert folded up. And you have to unfold it and provide your own case. And so it just like permanently has these crease marks down it. I don't even know why I still have this. Honestly, I probably will get rid of it at some point. If anyone wants to buy this, you let me know. Next up, our third Genesis game of 4. This one is Beware, the Ultimate Evil of Warlock. Played this one not too terribly long ago, and honestly, it's so obtuse, it's ugly, it looks very muddy. Well, not muddy, but it just looks very uninspired. Like, it's just a lot of grays and browns, which I know is sort of the tone that they were going for, but it was really not jumping out at me. The control scheme on this is really what threw me off. First off, your jump is like, it's kind of Castlevania jump, but it's really stubby and it's very short. And then to use magic, you had to use like directional buttons plus start. One of those games where if you don't read the manual, you're probably going to have a really hard time with it. It's just, I have no love for the property. I had no love for this game when I played through it. There's a reason that this game is kind of often like lot filler on the Genesis. It's one of those games that you probably don't really actually want to put too much time into. Last one, I don't have a copy of this one. I must have gotten rid of it, or it's just missing for whatever reason, which is actually quite strange because this is a game that I had growing up. But I'll throw the box art up here. The last Genesis game that I rated a 1 star is Batman Forever. And I think this one of any of them has the most reputation. Like, people know that this is not a great game. You know, it has that sort of Mortal Kombat style visuals. The big problem with the game is that it's very repetitive in terms of its enemy design, and it's extremely obtuse in terms of where to go. The controls are so weird to figure out, and nothing is intuitive about it, and then you often have to like drop down through floors or like shoot your grappling up through the ceiling in places that don't really make any sense. It's just damn near impossible to figure out where you're headed. And I don't think I really need to belabor that one, because this is probably, of any of them, this is the one that like people really know to not be great. I had it as a kid. I don't think I ever made it through like the first stage, maybe the second stage, but I'm already not the world's biggest beat 'em up fan, and Batman Forever is certainly not changing my mind. All right, let's jump forward in time a little bit. Let's do a Nintendo DS game. I think this is my only 1-star DS game, as I throw the dust off of it here. This is a game called Sprung. Now, you know what you're getting into when you play Sprung, a game where everyone scores. I mean, you look at those screenshots. We got the brass knuckles that say hooked up. The guy, you know, holding the puppet strings. It's just, ugh. So, I bought this game kind of as a joke. I think it was like $2 at GameStop. And then I brought it with me, I remember, on a trip that I took in college. So this would have been like late 2000s. And I played through it to like kind of like prove that I could beat it, right? Like, again, sort of for the memes. And it was so bad it gave me a headache. It is every bit as awful as you think that it would be. The writing is just embarrassing. It's such a time capsule of like a worse time in the early 2000s. It's like, even if you are looking for a dating sim, this is still one of the worst games out there in that genre. So I don't think anyone else is considering buying Sprung, but you really shouldn't. This is published by Ubisoft, like a major publisher. Think about if Ubisoft published Sprung in 2024. Like, people would run them out of town. I need a sip of coffee before we get into the next ones here. So we're going to jump to N64. And this is actually a pretty good transition from Sprung. We have Xena Warrior Princess on the Nintendo 64. So this one, I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a generic fighting game. I didn't really watch too much Xena growing up. My neighbor watched a little bit of it, and I caught an episode here or there, but it wasn't really my thing. And I'm not a big fighting game guy, so you take a property I don't really care about and a genre I don't play too often, and just kind of mix them with a big bland bowl of oatmeal, and you get Xena Warrior Princess. The only reason I even own this game is because I forget what I wanted that year. There was some other game I wanted on N64 when I got this. So, I got this in like 1999, 2000, somewhere, at a Christmas around that time. And my mom and my sister bought it for me as a gag gift. So I unwrapped it under the Christmas tree. I opened Xena Warrior Princess. I opened another good game too. But I unwrapped Xena Warrior Princess. They're laughing. Ha ha ha, it's so funny. You got Xena Warrior Princess. And just to spite them, I immediately marched into my bedroom, plugged this into the Nintendo 64, and on Christmas Eve, I played all the way through this game. 100%. Beat it. And I came out and I was like, I beat your game. Ugh. That's how I got my power back as like a 12-year-old or whatever it was. But yeah, just nothing I'm ever going to want to go back and revisit. I keep it for the story and I have the memories tied to it, but yeah, not really, not a great one. And then the other N64 game we have is Monster Truck Madness 64. This one, this is everything that people complain about on the N64. People are wrong. The N64 is great, but this is making a case against it, right? Like, it's got muddy textures. It's got that fog. It controls pretty terribly, like bad sound design. The Checkpoint has this weird announcer guy that just says the same thing over and over and over again. It's tuned all weird. The difficulty's all over the place. It's just not what you're looking for. I don't know. It was not a good time. In fact, my note on Backloggery for this one is so funny. I said, I got this as a gift from someone I don't like. So that explains a lot. A frenemy gave this to me. And of course, I kept it forever and will cherish it for all time. But I wouldn't recommend that you play it. All right, we're going to go to Game Boy Color now. And we got two. First one up here. This is just, I don't know why I'm being so mean on this one. This is an example of why was I being so harsh. We got Centipede on the Game Boy Color. I gave this game a 1 star. Now, I had this, back when the Game Boy Color was the current Game Boy. This is one of my childhood games. And yeah, it's, a little boring for a kid that age. A 9-year-old isn't really looking to play a lot of Centipede to get them excited. And it's probably not the world's best port, but I don't know, fundamentally Centipede is still kind of a fun game. I can't imagine I would give this a 1 star again if I played it now. I mean, I would want to replay it to see, but it's just what it says on the tin, Centipede. So there's really no reason for me to have knocked it that hard, but you can't go back in time. And then the other one, another game that I actually had in my childhood collection. So this is one of those examples where nostalgia and quality are not meeting. And that's the Rugrats movie on the Game Boy Color. So I was a Rugrats kid growing up. Me and Tommy and Chucky and Phil and Lil. All right. We got down with it. I watched Rugrats for a long time. But this is like textbook sort of just like licensed junk. It is, you play as the Rugrats, which is kind of its only appeal for a kid that age. But it's got a lot of blind jumps. The Game Boy Color screen is already pretty small, and this doesn't like really design around it in any way. So you're just kind of like taking leaps of faith, having to drop down into what looks like a bottomless pit, but maybe a platform below you. The music and the sound effects are extremely grating. It's just, again, the same kind of like maze-ish levels that I was talking before for some of the Genesis games, like trees that you're just jumping around on branches and stuff like that. There's no real reason to play this over any other 2D platformer. Even if you have Rugrats nostalgia, you'd be better like adding it to your collection but not playing it. It is really not one that I highly recommend at all. Alright, let's go on to my 1-360 game. I don't know why I was so mean to this one either. Big Bumpin'. We gave Big Bumpin' a 1 star. What's up with that? So, these are the 3 Burger King games. Obviously, Sneak King being the best, but we got Pocket Bike Racer and Big Bumpin'. Apparently, I didn't give Pocket Bike Racer a 1 star, but I did give Big Bumpin'. That's just bumper cars. Like, what did bumper cars ever do to me? I mean, it's not really super exciting, but I think these days I would give it like a 2 or a 3 star. It does what it says to. My comment and backloggery for this one says, probably the best bumper car simulation of 2006. Probably. We'd have to really take that to the spreadsheet and see, survey the field, see what other bumper car games there were. But yeah, why you're playing these Burger King games if you're playing them. It's not really even in a matter of quality. It's for a laugh. So maybe an appropriate one, maybe a loving 1 star on that one. Let's do 2, and no, we got 3 NES games. The first 2, I literally have no idea why I ever put these as 1 star. I barely have any memory of playing either of them, but both Skate or Die and Ski or Die, I gave a 1 star rating to. Now, Skate or Die, it's not like my favorite skateboarding game, but my memory of it is that it's not all that bad. So I'd have to go back and pop it in and see if I really agree with that 1 star, but I think I was maybe in a bad mood or I hadn't eaten lunch that day when I gave it a 1 star. I didn't give myself any indication as to why I don't like it, because my comment and backloggery just says skate. So, and this one says ski. So, informative. But yeah, Ski or Die I've played very little of, but I like Ski Free, so is it really that bad? You tell me. Skate or Die I can't imagine is a 1 star game. That's just a little mean. This one I would agree with is a 1 star game, though. Not a fan of this one. Daydreamin' Davy. So if you watched my NES video, my NES collection video, you'll have heard me already talk about this one. But it's all premise that does not get executed on well. The idea is you're playing as this Davy character in different daydreams, and so you go to different settings where you play as a knight or a western or, just sort of like common video game time periods, eras, locations, which could be cool for like a top-down sort of game or a side-scrolling sort of game. They really could have mixed it up, but in practice, it just doesn't work. Hit detection's all goofy. Levels are like difficult to navigate or way too simple. It's just I don't know, it just lets me down. So I wish I liked Daydreamin' Davy more, because it seems like the type of game I'd want to recommend. Like, oh, look at this cool kind of one-off platformer. But no, it is not worth your time. All right, Xbox, original Xbox. I've got 5 here for you, which is pretty surprising. And we've got a couple that, especially right off the gate here, and all these actually, there's some stuff in here that people will be surprised to see. First off, Star Wars Obi-Wan. This is one of the first games I got for my 360, and for my original Xbox, and I like Star Wars. But something about this game, I just thought that it controlled kind of goofy. It didn't feel very good to play. I thought that it was just kind of boring. And, I'm someone that can get into the Star Wars universe, but something about the setting that you were in and the places they sent you and the enemies you were fighting, it was just kind of like, my memory of it was a lot of like big warehouse levels that don't really have a lot of theming and fighting the same generic enemy over and over again. The powers didn't feel great for me to use. So, I actually end up not loving a lot of these like early 2000 era Star Wars games. Like, I like the N64 ones, but then stuff like this or Star Wars Bounty Hunter on GameCube, I just didn't like those very much. Bounty Hunter's not a 1 star game. It's not coming up in this list. Next one here. This is one people might be upset with me for. Got the original Spider-Man. Now, I love Spider-Man 2 on Xbox. That game is great. The original high-quality web slinging. And I actually think that the reason that Spider-Man 1 is so low is that I played it after Spider-Man 2. So I saw all the potential of Spider-Man 2, and then going back to this, and it's just like a lot more of a generic beat-em-up, which, again, not necessarily my favorite genre. It just, I don't know. It just didn't really feel like Spider-Man to me. I felt more like I was playing as sort of like a generic hero or a generic character wearing a Spider-Man costume. I think that maybe folks have a lot of nostalgia for this one. and it's not necessarily getting a fair review. Or maybe I'm being overly harsh. Again, I haven't played this in 15 years, so my memory of it is that it pales pretty universally in comparison to Spider-Man 2, and so I gave it a 1 star. All right, this was a random one. We've got Soldier of Fortune 2 Double Helix. Just the world's most generic shooter possible. I remember I don't know why I remember this, but I remember paying $20 for this game at the time and thinking it was a great deal. And it's just nothing about this game's story is memorable. Nothing about this game's locations were memorable. And I remember randomly dying a lot. I don't even know if it was like, grenades from off screen that I didn't see. I remember literally I would just be running around and my character would become dead somehow. So I think this one is just kind of lost to time, maybe for a good reason. And I certainly wouldn't recommend folks go back and check it out. I do remember I had a friend that really liked this game though. I think I kind of let him down by not loving it. Oof. We've got 2 back-to-back that are going to make some enemies here. First off, I'm sorry. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the official game based on literary works of J.R.R. Tolkien. So, I actually, like many of you, really did enjoy the Two Towers game and the Return of the King game, Good co-op, fun, hack and slash action games. Phenomenal. But I felt like the Fellowship of the Ring was like the necessary prototype that we needed to get to those better games. It felt a lot more like generic for the time. It felt more of like a tie-in game that doesn't quite have as much heart, is my memory of it. I actually remember feeling pretty similarly about The Hobbit, too, which I know is kind of a fan favorite, so I apologize. I'd have to replay The Hobbit, though. But yeah, sort of the Spider-Man situation where you play the better ones first, and you really feel kind of the lack of this first one. Now, this is one that I legitimately have not played since it came out, like 2000-something. So maybe I wouldn't feel the same today, but I certainly felt that way at the time. Last one here. Oh, this... If I was going to be clickbaiting people, I would have put this one in the thumbnail. All right. Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. People's favorite game. No. In reality, I think that my distaste for this game is entirely based on this port of the game. I played and only played the Xbox version of the game, and it really let me down. Like, I like the world of Elder Scrolls. I like all of the different creatures, and it feels like there's kind of like endless potential. Even if I've never really been a big Elder Scrolls guy myself. I'm one of the few people that has not played through Skyrim. I've played maybe an hour of Oblivion. I think I've not played Oblivion at all. I think I've watched an hour of Oblivion. But I played all the way through Morrowind on the 360, and it's the load times that get you in this game. You have to go in and out of so many doors, and every door has a freaking long load time that it just ultimately ends up like over half your playthrough is just waiting for load times. And the other half of your playthrough was reading a bunch of text or messing with a skill system that didn't seem to be working for me. Like the premise is like the more you do stuff, the better you get at it, but it felt like there was no actual progression. I don't know if that was because I was expecting too much, or if it's because this version of the game was bugging out on me, because there were several other bugs that I ran into and that my friend ran into, because we sort of played it in tandem. But yeah, probably because of the port, but Morrowind was a bit of a slog. 2 games remaining. First up here, we have a game from a well-loved and I would say currently sort of getting a bit of a renaissance, not in terms of new games, but in terms of like attention thanks to some HD re-releases. Got Grandia Extreme. I love Grandia 2, is one of my favorite RPGs. Grandia 1, which I played not that long ago, an incredible RPG. But Grandia Extreme does not do it. This is a very different game. It is more of like a dungeon crawler. You're in like this center town and you dive into these different locations and do some dungeon crawling rather than being a big, sweeping, long adventure. And I remember when playing it, I played it not long after Grandia 2, hoping for more Grandia, and I was just so bored playing this one. It did not offer the same like experience, the same characters. I couldn't name a single character in this game. I don't even recognize any of the characters off the back. So, I mean, it's got voice work by Mark Hamill and Lisa Loeb, so that's cool. But yeah, not a spin-off or like a side game that I think just does not deliver. And, you know, would I give it a 1-star today? Who knows? I'd have to go back and try it out again, but at the time, I definitely was disappointed. And the last one here. Haven, Call of the King. This is a game that was... How do you describe it? This game was pitched as containing every genre in one. Like, they wanted to make a game that was everything to everyone, which never works out. That's never a good idea. And so there were platforming sections that were similar-ish to Jak and Daxter. There was like arena combat sections. There was racing sections. There was a lot of mini games. They wanted to put every genre in here. But in reality, what that meant is that it did a bunch of things poorly. And in reality, it also didn't have every genre, of course, you know. Didn't have a good rhythm game in there. It never was survival horror. It just meant that you were playing a platformer with a lot of clunky mini games. I ended up trying so many times to beat this game. I remember I had a save file on my memory card that I would revisit every couple years. I would make a tiny bit of progress on, and then I would lose interest and fall off of it again. But I was dedicated to finishing my backlog at the time, so I pushed on when I really shouldn't have, and I did beat it. It doesn't help that it is so freaking long. It took way more time than it honestly deserved. This is one of those games when I look at it, I get a headache. Like, thinking about playing this game gives me a headache. I think back on my time with it, and it's like imagining a time that you got food poisoning. You just end up, your stomach turns sour, and your head starts throbbing. So, I don't recommend Haven, Call of the King. And that is it. All the 1-star games on my backloggery. Again, games are wonderful. I love video games. I even love some of these video games, as messed up as that is. But every now and again, it's good to reflect on the ones that didn't quite hit, so you can taste even more sweetly the ones that did. But that'll do it for me today. If you thought this was a good video, this was fun, let me know. We could always do more. I could always look at my 2-star games, which is not that far away from 1-star. Or any other, games from the collection. I'm happy to talk through whatever folks are interested in. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for hanging out, subscribing, all that. And until next time, peace.